Chapter 3 of First Lensman by E. Doc Smith. First Lensman, Chapter 3. The super-dreadnought Chicago, as she approached the imaginary but nevertheless sharply defined boundary which no other ship had been allowed to pass, went inert and crept forward mile by mile. Every man, from commissioner and counselor down, was taut and tense. So widely variant, so utterly fantastic were the stories going around about this Arisia that no one knew what to expect. They expected the unexpected, and got it. "Ah, Tellurians, you are precisely on time." A strong, assured, deeply resonant pseudo-voice made itself heard in the depths of each mind aboard the tremendous ship of war. "Pilots and navigating officers, you will shift course to 178-71253. Hold that course, inert, at 1 Tellurian gravity of acceleration. Virgil Samms will now be interviewed. He will return to the consciousnesses of the rest of you in exactly 6 of your hours." Practically dazed by the shock of their first experience with telepathy, not one of the Chicago's crew perceived anything unusual in the phraseology of that utterly precise, diamond-clear thought. Samms and Kinnison, however, precisionists themselves, did. But warned although they were, and keyed up although they were to detect any signs of hypnotism or of mental suggestion, neither of them had the faintest suspicion, then or ever, that Virgil Samms did not, as a matter of fact, leave the Chicago at all. Samms knew that he boarded a lifeboat and drove it toward the shimmering haze beyond which Arisia was. Commissioner Kinnison knew, as surely as did every other man aboard, that Samms did those things, because he and the other officers and most of the crew watched Samms do them. They watched the lifeboat dwindle in size with distance, watched it disappear within the peculiarly iridescent veil of force which their most penetrant ultra-beam spy rays could not pierce. They waited. And since every man concerned knew, beyond any shadow of doubt and to the end of his life, that everything that seemed to happen actually did happen, it will be so described. Virgil Samms then drove his small vessel through Arisia's innermost screen and saw a planet so much like Earth that it might have been her sister world. There were the white ice caps, the immense blue oceans, the verdant continents partially obscured by fleecy banks of cloud. Would there or would there not be cities? While he had not known at all exactly what to expect, he did not believe that there would be any large cities upon Arisia. To qualify for the role of Deus ex machina, the Arisian with whom Samms was about to deal would have to be a superman indeed, a being completely beyond man's knowledge or experience in power of mind. Would such a race of beings have need of such things as cities? They would not. There would be no cities. Nor were there. The lifeboat flashed downward, slowed, landed smoothly in a regulation dock upon the outskirts of what appeared to be a small village surrounded by farms and woods. "This way, please." An inaudible voice directed him toward a two-wheeled vehicle which was almost, but not quite, like a Dillingham roadster. This car, however, took off by itself as soon as Samms closed the door. It sped smoothly along a paved highway devoid of all other traffic, past farms and past cottages, to stop of itself in front of the low, massive structure which was the center of the village, and apparently its reason for being. "This way, please," and Samms went through an automatically opened door along a short, bare hall into a fairly large central room containing a vat and one deeply upholstered chair. "Sit down, please." Samms did so gratefully. He did not know whether he could have stood up much longer or not. He had expected to encounter a tremendous mentality, but this was a thing far, far beyond his wildest imaginations. This was a brain, just that, nothing else. Almost globular, at least 10 feet in diameter, immersed in and in perfect equilibrium with a pleasantly aromatic liquid. A brain. "Relax," the Arisian ordered, soothingly, and Samms found that he could relax. "Through the one you know as Bergenholm, I heard of your need and have permitted you to come here this once for instruction." "But none of this, it can't be real," Samms blurted. I must be imagining it. And yet I know that I can't be hypnotized. I've been psychoed against it." "What is reality?" the Arisian asked quietly. "Your profoundest thinkers have never been able to answer that question, nor, although I am much older and a much more capable thinker than any member of your race, would I attempt to give you its true answer. Nor, since your experience has been so limited, is it to be expected that you could believe without reservation any assurances I might give you in thoughts or in words. You must then convince yourself, definitely by means of your own 5 senses, that I and everything about you are real, as you understand reality. You saw the village and this building. You see the flesh that houses the entity which is I. You feel your own flesh. As you tap the woodwork with your knuckles, you feel the impact and hear the vibrations as sound. As you entered this room, you must have perceived the odor of the nutrient solution in which and by virtue of which I live. There remains only the sense of taste. Are you by any chance either hungry or thirsty?" "Both." "Drink of the tankard in the niche yonder. In order to avoid any appearance of suggestion, I will tell you nothing of its content, except the one fact that it matches perfectly the chemistry of your tissues." Gingerly enough, Samms brought the pitcher to his lips. Then, seizing it in both hands, he gulped down a tremendous draught. It was good. It smelled like all appetizing kitchen aromas blended into one. It tasted like all of the most delicious meals he had ever eaten. It quenched his thirst as no beverage had ever done. But he could not empty even that comparatively small container. Whatever the stuff was, it had a satiety value immensely higher even than old, rare roast beef. With a sigh of repletion, Samms replaced the tankard and turned again to his peculiar host. "I am convinced that was real. No possible mental influence could so completely and unmistakably satisfy the purely physical demands of a body as hungry and as thirsty as mine was. Thanks immensely for allowing me to come here, Mr. You may call me Mentor. I have no name, as you understand the term. Now then, please think fully, you need not speak, of your problems and of your difficulties, of what you have done and of what you have it in mind to do." Samms thought, flashingly and cogently. A few minutes sufficed to cover Triplanetary's history and the beginning of the Solarian Patrol. Then, for almost 3 hours, he went into the ramifications of the Galactic Patrol of his imaginings. Finally, he wrenched himself back to reality. He jumped up, paced the floor, and spoke. "But there's a vital flaw, one inherent and absolutely ruinous fact that makes the whole thing impossible," he burst out rebelliously. "No one man, or group of men, no matter who they are, can be trusted with that much power. The Council and I have already been called everything imaginable, and what we have done so far is literally nothing at all in comparison with what the Galactic Patrol could and must do. Why, I myself would be the first to protest against the granting of such power to anybody. Every dictator in history, from Philip of Macedon to the tyrant of Asia, claimed to be, and probably was in his beginnings, motivated solely by benevolence. How am I to think that the proposed Galactic Council, or even I myself, will be strong enough to conquer a thing that has corrupted utterly every man who has ever won it? Who is to watch the watchman?" "The thought does you credit, youth," Mentor replied, unmoved. That is one reason why you are here. You, of your own force, cannot know that you are in fact incorruptible. I, however, know. Moreover, there is an urgency by virtue of which that which you now believe to be impossible will become commonplace. Extend your arm." Samms did so, and there snapped around his wrist a platinum iridium bracelet carrying, wristwatch-wise, a lenticular something at which the Tellurian stared in stupefied amazement. It seemed to be composed of thousands, millions of tiny gems, each of which emitted pulsatingly all the colors of the spectrum. It was throwing out, broadcasting, a turbulent flood of writhing, polychromatic light. "The successor to the golden meteor of the Triplanetary service," Mentor said calmly. "The lens of Arisia. You may take my word for it, until your own experience shall have convinced you of the fact, that no one will ever wear Arisia's lens who is any sense unworthy. Here also is one for your friend, Commissioner Kinnison. It is not necessary for him to come physically to Arisia. It is, you will observe, in an insulated container and does not glow. Touch its surface, but lightly and very fleetingly, for the contact will be painful." Sam's fingertip barely touched one dull, gray, lifeless jewel. His whole arm jerked away uncontrollably as there swept through his whole being the intimation of an agony more poignant by far than any he had ever known. "Why, it's alive!" he gasped. "No, it is not really alive, as you understand the term." Mentor paused, as though seeking a way to describe to the Tellurian a thing which was to him starkly incomprehensible. "It is, however, endowed with what you might call a sort of pseudo-life, by virtue of which it gives off its characteristic radiation while, and only while, it is in physical circuit with the living entity, the ego, let us say, with whom it is in exact resonance. Glowing, the lens is perfectly harmless. It is complete, saturated, satiated, fulfilled. In the dark condition it is, as you have learned, dangerous in the extreme. It is then incomplete, unfulfilled, frustrated. You might say seeking or yearning or demanding. In that condition its pseudo-life interferes so strongly with any life to which it is not attuned that that life in a space of seconds is forced out of this plane or cycle of existence." "Then I alone, of all the entities in existence, can wear this particular lens?" Samms licked his lips and stared at it, glowing so satisfyingly and contentedly upon his wrist. "But when I die, will it be a perpetual menace?" "By no means. A lens cannot be brought into being except to match some one living personality. A short time after you pass into the next cycle, your lens will disintegrate." "Wonderful!" Samms breathed in awe. "But there's one thing. These things are priceless, and there will be millions of them to make. And you don't—" "What will we get out of it, you mean?" The Arisian seemed to smile. "Exactly." Samms blushed, but held his ground. "Nobody does anything for anything. Altruism is beautiful in theory, but it has never been known to work in practice. I will pay a tremendous price, any price within reason or possibility, for the lens, but I will have to know what that price is to be." "It will be heavier than you think or can at present realize, although not in the sense you fear." Mentor's thought was solemnity itself. "Whoever wears the lens of Arisia will carry a load that no weaker mind could bear, the load of authority, of responsibility, of knowledge that would wreck completely any mind of lesser strength. Altruism? No. Nor is it a case of good against evil, as you so firmly believe. Your mental picture of glaring white and of unrelieved black is not a true picture. Neither absolute evil nor absolute good do or can exist." "But that would make it still worse," Samms protested. "In that case, I can't see any reason at all for your exerting yourselves, putting yourselves out for us." "There is, however, reason enough, although I am not sure that I can make it as clear to you as I would wish. There are, in fact, 3 reasons, any one of which would justify us in exerting, would compel us to exert, the trivial effort involved in the furnishing of lenses to your Galactic Patrol. First, there is nothing either intrinsically right or intrinsically wrong about liberty or slavery, democracy or autocracy, freedom of action or complete regimentation. It seems to us, however, that the greatest measure of happiness and of well-being for the greatest number of entities, and therefore the optimum advancement toward whatever sublime goal it is toward which this cycle of existence is trending in the vast and unknowable scheme of things, is to be obtained by securing for each and every individual the greatest amount of mental and physical freedom compatible with the public welfare. We of Arisia are only a small part of this cycle, and as goes the whole, so goes in greater or lesser degree each of the parts. Is it impossible for you, a fellow citizen of this cycle universe, to believe that such fulfillment alone would be ample compensation for a much greater effort?" "I never thought of it in that light." It was hard for Samms to grasp the concept. He never did understand it thoroughly. "I begin to see, I think. At least, I believe you. Second, we have a more specific obligation in that the life of many, many worlds has sprung from a Arisian seed. Thus, in loco parentis, we would be derelict indeed if we refused to act. And third, you yourself spend highly valuable time and much effort in playing chess. Why do you do it? What do you get out of it?" "Why, mental exercise, I suppose. I like it." "Just so. And I am sure that one of your very early philosophers came to the conclusion that a fully competent mind, from a study of one fact or artifact belonging to any given universe, could construct or visualize that universe, from the instant of its creation to its ultimate end." "Yes, at least I have heard the proposition stated, but I have never believed it possible." "It is not possible simply because no fully competent mind ever has existed or ever will exist. A mind can become fully competent only by the acquisition of infinite knowledge, which would require infinite time as well as infinite capacity. Our equivalent of your chess, however, is what we call the visualization of the cosmic all. In my visualization, a descendant of yours named Clarissa MacDougall will, in a store called Brenlier's upon the planet— But no, let us consider a thing nearer at hand and concerning you personally, so that its accuracy will be subject to check. Where will you be, and exactly what will you be doing at some definite time in the future? 5 years, let us say?" "Go ahead. If you can do that, you're good." 5 Tellurian calendar years, then, from the instant of your passing through the screen of the hill on this present journey, you will be— Allow me, please, a moment of thought. You will be in a barber shop not yet built, the address of which is to be 1515 12th Avenue, Spokane, Washington, North America, Tellus. The barber's name will be Antonio Carbonero, and he will be left-handed. He will be engaged in cutting your hair, or rather, the actual cutting will have been done, and he will be shaving, with a razor trademarked Jensen King Bird, the short hairs in front of your left ear. A comparatively small, quadrupedal, grayish-striped entity of the race called cat. A young cat, this one will be, and called Thomas, although actually of the female sex, will jump into your lap, addressing you pleasantly in a language with which you yourself are only partially familiar. You call it mewing and purring, I believe?" "Yes," the flabbergasted Samms managed to say. "Cats do purr, especially kittens." "Ah, very good. Never having met a cat personally, I am gratified at your corroboration of my visualization." This female youth, erroneously called Thomas, somewhat careless in computing the elements of her trajectory, will jostle slightly the barber's elbow with her tail, thus causing him to make a slight incision, approximately 3 millimeters long, parallel to and just above your left cheekbone. At the precise moment in question, the barber will be applying a styptic pencil to this insignificant wound. This forecast is, I trust, sufficiently detailed so that you will have no difficulty in checking its accuracy or its lack thereof?" "Detailed? Accuracy?" Samms could scarcely think. "But listen, not that I want to cross you up deliberately, but I'll tell you now that a man doesn't like to get sliced by a barber, even such a little nick as that. I'll remember that address and the cat, and I'll never go into the place." "Every event does affect the succession of events," Mentor acknowledged, equably enough. "Except for this interview, you would have been in New Orleans at that time, instead of in Spokane. I have considered every pertinent factor. You will be a busy man. Hence, while you will think of this matter frequently and seriously during the near future, you will have forgotten it in less than 5 years. You will remember it only at the touch of the astringent, whereupon you will give voice to certain self-derogatory and profane remarks." "I ought to." Samms grinned, a not-too-pleasant grin. He had been appalled by the quality of mind able to do what Mentor had just done. He was now more than appalled by the Arisian's calm certainty that what he had foretold in such detail would in every detail come to pass. "If, after all this, Spokane, let a tiger-striped kitten jump into my lap, let a left-handed Tony Carbonero nick me? Mentor, If I do, I'll deserve to be called everything I can think of." "These that I have mentioned, the gross occurrences, are problems only for inexperienced thinkers." Mentor paid no attention to Sam's determination never to enter that shop. "The real difficulties lie in the fine detail, such as the length, mass, and exact place and position of landing upon apron or floor of each of your hairs as it is severed. Many factors are involved: other clients passing by, opening and shutting doors, air currents, sunshine, wind, pressure, temperature, humidity, the exact fashion in which the barber will flick his shears, which in turn depends upon many other factors, what he will have been doing previously, what he will have eaten and drunk, whether or not his home life will have been happy. You little realize, youth, what a priceless opportunity this will be for me to check the accuracy of my visualization. I shall spend many periods upon the problem. I cannot attain perfect accuracy, of course. 99.99%, let us say, or perhaps 10 nines, is all that I can reasonably expect." "But, Mentor," Samms protested, "I can't help you on a thing like that. How can I know or report the exact mass, length, and orientation of single hairs?" "You cannot. But since you will be wearing your lens, I myself can and will compare minutely my visualization with the actuality. For know, youth, that wherever any lens is, there can any Arisian be if he so desires. And now, knowing that fact, and from your own knowledge of the satisfactions to be obtained from chess and other such mental activities, and from the glimpses you have had into my own mind, do you retain any doubts that we Arisians will be fully compensated for the trifling effort involved in furnishing whatever number of lenses may be required?" "I have no more doubts. But this lens, I'm getting more afraid of it every minute. I see that it is a perfect identification. I can understand that it can be a perfect telepath. But is it something else as well? If it has other powers, what are they?" "I cannot tell you, or rather I will not. It is best for your own development that I do not, except in the most general terms. It has additional qualities, it is true, but since no two entities ever have the same abilities, no two lenses will ever be of identical qualities. Strictly speaking, a lens has no real power of its own. It merely concentrates, intensifies, and renders available whatever powers are already possessed by its wearer. You must develop your own powers and your own abilities. We of Arisia, in furnishing the lens, will have done everything that we should do." "Of course, sir, and much more than we have any right to expect. You have given me a lens for Roderick Kinnison. How about the others? Who is to select them?" "You are for a time." Silencing the man's protests, Mentor went on. "You will find that your judgment will be good. You will send to us only one entity who will not be given a lens, and it is necessary that that one entity should be sent here. You will begin a system of selecting and training which will become more and more rigorous as time goes on. This will be necessary, not for the selection itself, which the lensmen themselves could do among babies in their cradles, but because of the benefits thus conferred upon the many who will not graduate, as well as upon the few who will. In the meantime, you will select the candidates, and you will be shocked and dismayed when you discover how few you will be able to send. You will go down in history as First Lensman Samms, the Crusader, the man whose wide vision and tremendous grasp made it possible for the Galactic Patrol to become what it is to be. You will have highly capable help, of course. The Kinnisons, with their irresistible driving force, their indomitable will to do, their transcendent urge. Costigan, back of whose stout Irish heart lie Erin's best of brains and brawn. Your cousins George and Ray Olmsted. Your daughter Virgilia. Virgilia? Where does she fit into this picture? What do you know about her, and how? A mind would be incompetent indeed who could not visualize, from even the most fleeting contact with you, a fact which has been in existence for some 23 of your years. Her doctorate in psychology, her intensive studies under Martian and Venerian masters, even under one reformed adept of North Polar Jupiter, of the involuntary, uncontrollable, almost unknown, and hence highly revealing muscles of the face, the hands, and other parts of the human body. You will remember that poker game for a long time." "I certainly will." Samms grinned, a bit shamefacedly. "She gave us clear warning of what she was going to do, and then she cleaned us out to the last mellow." "Naturally. She has, all unconsciously, been training herself for the work she is destined to do. But to resume, you will feel yourself incompetent, unworthy. That, too, is a part of a lensman's load. When you first scan the mind of Roderick Kinnison, you will find that he, not you, should be the prime mover in the Galactic Patrol. But know now that no mind, not even the most capable in the universe, can either visualize truly or truly evaluate itself. Commissioner Kinnison, upon scanning your mind as he will scan it, will know the truth and will be well content. But time presses. In 1 minute you leave." "Thanks a lot. Thanks." Samms got to his feet and paused hesitantly. "I suppose that it will be all right. That is, I can call on you again if—" "No," the Arisian declared coldly. "My visualization does not indicate that it will ever again be either necessary or desirable for you to visit or to communicate with me or any other Arisian." Communication ceased as though a solid curtain had been drawn between the two. Sam strode out and stepped into the waiting vehicle, which whisked him back to his lifeboat. He blasted off, arriving in the control room of the Chicago precisely at the end of the 6th hour after leaving it. "Well, Rod, I'm back," he began and stopped, utterly unable to speak. For at the mention of the name, Sam's lens had put him fully en rapport with his friend's whole mind, and what he perceived struck him, literally and precisely dumb. He had always liked and admired Rod Kinnison. He had always known that he was tremendously able and capable. He had known that he was big, clean, a square shooter, the world's best. Hard, a driver who had little more mercy on his underlings in selected undertakings than he had on himself. But now, as he saw spread out for his inspection Kinnison's ego in its entirety, as he compared in fleeting glances that terrific mind with those of the other officers, good men too, all of them, assembled in the room, he knew that he had never even begun to realize what a giant Roderick Kinnison really was. "What's the matter, Virg?" Kinnison exclaimed, and hurried up, both hands outstretched. "You look like you're seeing ghosts. What did they do to you?" "Nothing much. But ghosts doesn't half describe what I'm seeing right now. Come into my office, will you, Rod?" Ignoring the curious stares of the junior officers, the commissioner and the counselor went into the latter's quarters, and in those quarters the two lensmen remained in close consultation during practically all of the return trip to Earth. In fact, they were still conferring deeply via lens when the Chicago landed and they took a ground car into the hill. "But who are you going to send first, Virg?" Kinnison demanded. "You must have decided on at least some of them by this time." "I know of only 5, or possibly 6, who are ready," Samms replied glumly. "I would have sworn that I knew of 100, but they don't measure up. Jack, Mason Northrop, and Conway Costigan, for the first load. Lyman Cleveland, Fred Robush, and perhaps Bergenholm. I haven't been able to figure him out, but I'll know when I get him under my lens next. That's all." "Not quite. How about your identical twin cousins, Ray and George Olmsted, who have been doing such a terrific job of counter-spying?" "Perhaps. Quite possibly. And if I'm good enough, Clayton and Schweikert certainly are, to name only 2 of the Commodores. And Canobos and Dal Knowlton. And above all, how about Jill?" "Jill? Why, I don't—" "She measures up, of course, but at that, there was nothing said against it either. I wonder. Why not have the boys in, Jill too, and thrash it out?" The young people were called in. The story was told, the problem stated. The boys' reaction was instantaneous and unanimous. Jack Kinnison took the lead. "Of course Jill's going, if anybody does," he burst out vehemently. "Count her out, with all the stuff she's got? Hardly." "Why, Jack, this from you?" Jill seemed highly surprised. "I have it on excellent authority that I'm a stinker, a half-witted one at that, a jelly-brain with come-hither eyes." "You are, and a lot of other things besides." Jack Kinnison did not back up a millimeter, even before their fathers. "But even at your sappadilliest, your half-wits are better than most other people's whole ones. And I never said or thought that your brain couldn't function, whenever it wanted to, back of those sad eyes. Whatever it takes to be a lensman, sir," he turned to Samms, "she's got just as much as the rest of us, maybe more." "I take it, then, that there is no objection to her going?" Samms asked. There was no objection. "What ship shall we take, and when?" "The Chicago, now," Kinnison directed. "She's hot and ready. We didn't strike any trouble going or coming, so she didn't need much servicing. Flit!" They flitted, and the great battleship made the second cruise as uneventfully as she had made the first. The Chicago's officers and crew knew that the young people left the vessel separately, that they returned separately, each in his or her lifeboat. They met, however, not in the control room, but in Jack Kinnison's private quarters. The 3 young lensmen and the girl. The 3 were embarrassed, ill at ease. The lenses were, definitely, not working. Not one of them would put his lens on Jill, since she did not have one. The girl broke the short silence. "Wasn't she the most perfectly beautiful thing you ever saw?" she breathed. "In spite of being over 7 feet tall? She looked to be about 20, except her eyes, but she must have been 100 to know so much. But what are you boys staring so about?" "She?" 3 voices blurted as one. "Yes, she. Why? I know we weren't together, but I got the impression, some way or other, that there was only the one. What did you see?" All 3 men started to talk at once, a clamor of noise. Then all stopped at once. "You first, Spud. Whom did you talk to, and what did he, she, or it say?" Although Conway Costigan was a few years older than the other 3, they all called him by nickname as a matter of course. "National Police Headquarters, Chief of the Detective Bureau," Costigan reported crisply. "Between 43 and 45, 6 feet and a half an inch, 175. Hard, fine, keen. A big-time operator, if ever there was one. Looked a lot like your father, Jill. The same dark auburn hair, just beginning to gray, and the same deep orange-yellow markings in his eyes. He gave me the works. Then took his lens out of his safe, snapped it onto my wrist, and gave me 2 orders: get out and stay out." Jack and Mace stared at Costigan, at Jill, and at each other. Then they whistled in unison. "I see this is not going to be a unanimous report, except possibly in one minor detail," Jill remarked. "Mace, you're next." "I landed on the campus of the University of Arisia," Northrop stated flatly. "Immense place, hundreds of thousands of students. They took me to the physics department, to the private laboratory of the department head himself. He had a panel with about 1,000,000 meters and gauges on it. He scanned and measured every individual component element of my brain. Then he made a pattern, on a milling router just about as complicated as his panel. From there on, of course, it was simple. Just like a dentist making a set of china choppers or a metallurgist embedding a test section. He snapped a couple of sentences of directions at me and then said, 'Scram.' That's all." "Sure that was all?" Costigan asked. "Didn't he add, 'and stay scrammed'?" "He didn't say it exactly, but the implication was clear enough." "The one point of similarity," Jill commented. "Now you, Jack. You have been looking as though we were all candidates for canvas jackets that lace tightly up the back." As though maybe I am. I didn't see anything at all. Didn't even land on the planet. Just floated around in an orbit inside that screen. The thing I talked with was a pattern of pure force. This lens simply appeared on my wrist, bracelet and all, out of thin air. He told me plenty, though, in a very short time. His last word being for me not to come back or call back." This of Jack's was a particularly indigestible bit, even for Jill Samms. "In plain words," Costigan volunteered, "we all saw exactly what we expected to see." Jill denied. "I certainly did not expect to see a woman. No. What each of us saw, I think, was what would do us the most good, give each of us the highest possible lift. I am wondering whether or not there was anything at all really there." "That might be it at that." Jack scowled in concentration. "But there must have been something there. These lenses are real. But what makes me mad is that they wouldn't give you a lens. You are just as good a man as any one of us. If I didn't know it wouldn't do a damn bit of good, I'd go back there right now and—" "Don't pop off so, Jack." Jill's eyes, however, were starry. "I know you mean it, and I could almost love you at times, but I don't need a lens. As a matter of fact, I'll be much better off without one." "Jet back, Jill." Jack Kinnison stared deeply into the girl's eyes, but still did not use his lens. "Somebody must have done a terrific job of selling to make you believe that. Or are you sold, actually?" "Actually, honestly. That Arisian was 1,000 times more of a woman than I ever will be, and she didn't wear a lens, never had worn one. Women's minds and lenses don't fit. There's a sex-based incompatibility. Lenses are as masculine as whiskers, and at that, only a very few men can ever wear them either. Very special men, like you three and Dad and Pops Kinnison. Men with tremendous force, drive, and scope. Pure killers, all of you. Each in his own way, of course. No more to be stopped than a glacier, and twice as hard and 10 times as cold. A woman simply can't have that kind of a mind. There is going to be a woman Lensman someday, just one, but not for years and years, and I wouldn't be in her shoes for anything. In this job of mine, Well, go on. What is this job you're so sure you are going to do? Why, I don't know, Jill exclaimed, startled eyes wide. I thought I knew all about it, but I don't. Do you, about yours? They did not one of them, and they were all as surprised at that fact as the girl had been. Well, to get back to this Lady Lensman who is going to appear some day, I gather that she is going to be some kind of a freak. She'll have to be, practically, because of the sex-based fundamental nature of the lens. Mentor didn't say so in so many words, but she made it perfectly clear that— "Mentor!" the 3 men exclaimed. Each of them had dealt with Mentor. "I am beginning to see," Jill said thoughtfully. "Mentor, not a real name at all. To quote the unabridged verbatim, I had occasion to look the word up the other day, and I am appalled now at the certainty that there was a connection. Quote, Mentor, a wise and faithful counselor, unquote. Have any of you boys anything to say? I haven't, and I am beginning to be scared blue." Silence fell, and the more they thought, those 3 young lensmen and the girl who was one of the 2 human women ever to encounter knowingly an Arisian mind, the deeper that silence became. End of Chapter 3.